Saludos a toda la afición de la lucha libre. Este que les habla es Michael Morales Torres, integrante del equipo de Lucha Libre Online. Y tenemos el enorme privilegio de presentarles a nuestro invitado especial en la tarde de hoy de Estados Unidos para el mundo, ex campeón mundial junior completo y ex campeón mundial en pareja de la WWC en Puerto Rico. Damas y caballeros, Brent Dail is in the house here on Lucha Libre Online. Brent, it is an honor for us to have you as our guest. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How about yourself? Thanks for having me.
Everything good here in Puerto Rico. Thank you for being here. And I just wanted to start the interview asking you, how did your passion for pro wrestling started? I mean, which was the match or the rivalry or the wrestler that engaged you enough to do this?
I would say that it started when I was a kid. I started we used to have championship wrestling from Florida on, and then like when I was down here in Florida, I lived in the Lakeland area. So we would have championship wrestling from Florida. You would see like world-class championship wrestling on TV. You'd see WWF or WWE at the time, and you would get them every Saturday. So there was not one wrestler that like completely like stood out. I mean, I knew Hulk Hogan was great, Ric Flair, all the different guys. And there were so many ones that I liked that had different little things that I thought was great. Like I'd root for one guy or I'd root for some other guy that I thought was pretty good, or like, just how I was, I mean, I liked Kerry Von Erich and world-class championship wrestling. I liked Al Perez. I liked whoever that I thought that would think would be pretty good. I got into, I watched wrestling as much as I possibly could. I watched ESPN, all that good stuff, whatever, because there was a lot more to choose from back then. So you had a lot more to, to look at. So
I'll translate that story. ¿Qué inspiró o quién inspiró a Brent Dail a hacer luchador? Bueno, no hay una figura per se que lo inspiró, pero sí una empresa, Championship Wrestling de Florida. Cuando estaba creciendo era la empresa que él veía y ahí vio figuras como Hulk Hogan, como Ric Flair, como Al Pérez, entre muchísimas otras personas que llegaron a estar allí. Y fue esta empresa, vamos a decirlo de esta manera, que lo inspiró a ser luchador y lo que estaba viendo a través de su niñez con ellos directamente. Antes menciona que había más oportunidades de elegir, tenías lucha libre en ESPN, por darte un ejemplo, y en múltiples canales, que eso también ayudó. So, what do you recall of your first trainings inside the wrestling industry? I mean, you decided you wanted to become a wrestler. Now the first step is to get in the ring and start training. So, how was that experience for you?
Well, it was something different because I'd started in amateur wrestling when I was like in 10th grade, 15 years old.
Oh,
I did really well at that, but we didn't have, MMA back then. I mean, what I watched on TV was what, okay, well, I'm going to model after this guy or do what needs to be done there. So I did really good in amateur wrestling in high school and college. And then after that, I got kind of lucky, and Gerald Briscoe discovered me at some wrestling tournament one time. He sent me to Dory Funk. I worked with Dory Funk, and when I first hit the ring, I was like, because he said, well, we just got to change a little bit of what you do. But I was like, okay. He Dory Funk was almost salivating when I like first came in and started showing him what I knew, and then after that, I just had to start learning, the basics and stuff. But I'd say taking a bump the first time was probably like, yeah, okay, this is not amateur wrestling. But yeah, I got this. So that was pretty much after that. And then later on, kind of how it went. I mean, I just jumped in with both feet. And at the time, I would say Kurt Angle was getting really popular. I know that WWE had signed Brock Lesnar. And when I got in, and Gerald Briscoe was the guy that signed half of these guys. So I was just kind of another project that they were having off to the side to see what I could do. So, and the only thing was I was smaller than most of them. So that's why, but that's about it. But it was cool. I loved it. I thought it was great. I took to it and I said, okay, I can do this. I want to do this. So that was about it. So
I'll translate that. ¿Cómo fueron los primeros entrenamientos de Brent Dail? Pues Brent Dail tuvo una carrera un poco inusual porque empezó a luchar en amateur wrestling cuando tenía 15 años, que estando ya en el grado 10, décimo grado. Allí tuvo la suerte que en uno de los torneos Gerald Briscoe, agente de WWE, le puso los encima y dijo, este muchacho es bueno, y se lleva a Brent Dail para allá con Terry Funk, y estaba salivando con la idea por todo lo que podía hacer. Y lo interesante de esto es que Brent podía hacer de todo un poco. Cuando toma su primer bomb, la primera caída, él dice, esto no es amateur wrestling, esto es lucha libre. Y ahí entiende como que la diferencia. Menciona que en aquel momento había figuras como Kurt Angle agarrando popularidad, Brock Lesnar agarrando popularidad, ambos amateur wrestlers, ambos descubiertos por Gerald Briscoe. Y la diferencia es que Brent Dail era más tamaño, más pequeño en cuanto a tamaño que a ellos dos. What do you recall of your first professional wrestling match?
It was actually for the Florida Heavyweight Championship.
Your first match.
My first match. Yep. It was at the Fort Homer Hesterly Armory in Tampa, well-known building for Florida. I mean, they had big title changes there, from Terry Funk beating Jack Briscoe to, you know, whatever. I mean, that was a staple in Tampa. So that was my first match, and it was like in front of like 2,000 people. Wow. And they set up an angle for, I wrestled a guy. His name was Adam Windsor. He was a Florida champion, and it was a good match. We did really well, and at the end of it, I pretty much beat up Dory at the end of the match. So the crowd went crazy. I put him like in a crippler crossface, and half of my hometown was there to watch it. So it was like, he goes, I got to make these fans happy. So he was like doing that, and it was a great match. I mean, my coaches came out from high school. It was really cool. My parents had never been into pro wrestling, but they came, and they were into it, you know. So it was just got the crowd going. It was a lot of fun. I mean, that place was electric. It was great. So I mean, it was something interesting. So, but I did it in a losing effort, but it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I was like, I think the bug really got me then. So it was like, I'm gonna continue to do this. So. But there you go. But that's kind of what we look at here.
Translate that. La empresa donde él creció viendo, Championship Wrestling Florida, lo que lo inspiró a ser luchador fue la primera empresa en donde él luchó. Y luchó por el campeonato máximo de Florida Championship Wrestling. Allá rapidito, directamente al main event en su primera lucha ante más de 2,000 personas. 2,000 personas en tu primera lucha, cualquiera se pone nervioso. Luchó contra el campeón de la empresa, toda su familia estaba ahí, sus papás nunca como que les gustó la lucha, pero llegaron ahí. Los coaches de wrestling de Brent Dail también estaban allí, y muchas personas llegaron a verlo. Hizo varias movidas, entre ellas el triple crossface constantemente en la lucha, y hubo varias cosas que pues perdió la lucha, pero eso fue lo que lo enganchó y dijo, ok, esto es lo que yo quiero hacer. While being there, how did you got the opportunity to work in Puerto Rico for Carlos Colon? How did that happen?
That was kind of an interesting deal there. Actually, what happened was I was being looked at by WWE at the time, and I think they thought that I needed a little bit more seasoning, and I needed a lot more experience in their eyes. So what happened was Gerald Briscoe, I had a tryout with WWE, and you know, I guess I was still green as a blade of grass. So what happened was Dory Funk, you know, was done training me at the time, and I went back and I worked with Gerald Briscoe, the high school they had at the time, and I actually trained his son Wes Briscoe in high school. His son was wrestling in high school. So what happened was basically, long story short, Jerry was like, all right, well, I think I'm going to go ahead and send you, because IWA was looking at me, or Victor Quinones and Dutch Mantell. But I don't know how sold they were on me. So what happened was Jerry was like, no, I'm going to send you to Carlos, and you want to go somewhere? I'm going to send you to Carlos Colon, World Wrestling Council. I said, okay. And he said, well, I want you to go down there, and I don't care if he has you selling hot dogs, selling tickets, selling hot dogs, whatever, you're going to do it. Setting up the ring, whatever he wants you to do, you're going to do it. I said, okay. So I went in there and, worked with his son for like about a couple of months before I left. Went down there, walked in there, and was ready to go. And it was kind of funny when I got there. Atletico, the referee, picked me up at the airport, and he didn't speak a lick of English. I actually kind of taught Atletico some English, but at the time he didn't know nothing. He goes, it has a sign up, Brent Dail, and I said, me? And he goes, okay, come on. And so he puts me in the car. I'm driving around looking. I go to the office. I meet Carlos and Jovica, come back. They go, all right, well, you're going to go to the Dahlia. That's where you're going to stay. I was like, okay. So when I got there, I had no clue what to do. I didn't speak Spanish. So people were kind of looking at me like I was an idiot. I call up Jerry Briscoe. This is the funny story. I call him up on a payphone. I said, well, I'm here. And he goes, and I said, well, he said, what do you think? I go, explained it a little bit to him. He goes, well, welcome to the wrestling business. Call me in a couple of months. Click. I was like, okay, what do I do now? So that was kind of a sink or swim mentality. So, and as you can see, I swam. So, it's really what happened. So
I'll translate that interesting story to Spanish.
Yeah.
Brent Dail tuvo un tryout de WWE, ya trabajando para ello, y llega el momento en que pues estaba muy verde, es lo que ellos entendían, y Gerald Briscoe, IWA, le tenían los ojos puestos encima. Ya Brent Dail estaba entrenando a Wes Briscoe, el hijo de Gerald, que estaba en high school, y Gerald le dice, ok, te voy a enviar a Puerto Rico. No importa si es vendiendo hot dogs, no importa si es montando cuadrilátero, no importa si es de seguridad, vas a ir allí, vas a crecer. Ok, lo que sea que haya que hacer, dijo Brent, vamos allá. Llega a Puerto Rico y lo recoge el Atlético, el árbitro. El Atlético no sabía nada de inglés. El Atlético estaba con un cartel que decía Brent Dail, ahí, paradito. Y entonces llega Brent y le dice, that's me, ese soy yo. Y se montan, ok, vente. Se montan el carro, lo lleva a la oficina de Carlos Colón, allí en San Juan. Conoce a Carlos, conoce a Jovi, que dice, ok, vente, ahora vamos a ir a donde te vas a quedar. Lo sueltan allí. Adiós, ok. Vamos a buscar a Gerald Briscoe, déjame llamarlo, agarra un payphone, en aquel momento un teléfono público que ya no existen, antes sí existían. Brent agarra el teléfono, le dice a Gerald, bueno, aquí estoy, ya llegué. Y Gerald le dice, ¿qué hago ahora? Y Gerald le dice como que, ok, bienvenido a la industria de la lucha libre. Me llamas en unos meses, clic, y colgó el teléfono. Y así fue como Brent.
It was a little nuts. I was like, okay, they said, you're going to be in Juana Diaz on Thursday. I was like, okay, how do I get there? Figure it out. I was like, okay. So that's kind of how I was when I first got there. So,
and you were in San Juan. Juana Diaz is on the southern part of the island. Holy shit.
Yeah, I was in Isla Verde, so it was like,
you made
cool
it?
Though. It was cool though. I loved it, But I was like, wow, there is like beach everywhere and pretty girls walking everywhere. This is nice. I was like, I have a funny story. Actually, when I got in my room, I turned on the TV, and the first song that was playing on there was turned on the video channel. I guess it was on an Elvis Crespo song,
Suavemente.
Cerveza, Dame Cerveza or whatever. Come on, and I'm watching the video, and I'm like, okay, is this what I'm in for here? And then, just the way it was. And I go, okay, well, at least I can know how to order beer here. So I walked outside. I walked down the beach and I said, well, it looks like the video, so I'm good. 5 years later, I left. Pretty much. So, yeah, good.
How did you made it to Juana Diaz in your first night? I mean, did you rent a car? Did you met someone?
No. Actually, what happens, do you remember the tag team, the Market Crashers?
The Market Crashers? No.
Okay, it was, the Sheik that's in, runs PCW out in California.
Okay.
Won the NWA title, him.
Yes,
him and his tag team partner, or Joe. Him and his tag team partner and Sean, they were, it was Dow Jones and NASDAQ or whatever, they were called. Anyways, they were in a program at the time with Thunder and Lightning. So they were there, and then a kid named Justin Sane was there.
Yeah.
And they told me, you're going to be a heel. I go, okay. So I rode with them to the town. They said, yeah, you can ride with us. You just got to pay some gas money. So, okay. So I ride with them to the town. And then when I get there, they go, no, you're not going to be a heel. You're going to be a baby face. Go over there.
The hell?
I was new. They had no clue. And I wrestled Ruben Pacino in my first match. That's what I did. And go ahead.
And how was the audience that night for you? Your first match in Puerto Rico.
Slam packed. Yeah, there were so many people. That's probably one of the biggest crowds that I've at the time, besides Fort Homer, Hesterly, Armley, that I wrestled in front of. Oh yeah, or in WWE. But I was really surprised for the amount of for how big the crowd was there. It was pretty huge, and it was a small town. So I mean, that's what was cool about those small towns. I mean, those people, they would come in droves out there. So that was the cool part. So. But it was fun. I met Invader the first time. That was like, he was the booker at the time. And he goes, okay, I want to talk to you. okay. So I sat down and talked to him, and then he was telling me what I needed to do and stuff. And I was like, okay. And he was, getting acquainted with me. Oh, you're Gerald Briscoe's guy you brought in, right? I said, yes, sir. And then we talked, and then he told me what he wanted me to do, and went from there. So
awesome. I'll translate the first part and then the second one.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Do what you got to do. I kind of talk all over the place. So yeah. I'm
awesome.
like tangent guy. I go way out here, they come back, so go ahead.
Awesome. So, cuando Brent Dail ya está en la isla, uno de los equipos que ya estaba haciendo un programa con Thunder y Lightning, y además de eso, otro de los compañeros, Saint, son quienes le dicen, ok, eres un rudo, te vas a montar con nosotros, lo único que tienes que hacer es pagar el dinero de gasolina. Pero antes de eso, él estaba viendo un comercial del Biscrespo, lo de dame cerveza, y es como que veía la playa, veía mujeres bonitas, y es como que, ok, por lo menos ya sé cómo voy a pedir mi cerveza, dame cerveza. Llega allí y sale, ok, esto es exactamente como el comercial. Historia larga corta, le toca luchar en Juana Díaz en su primer día, se monta con los muchachos, llega al coliseo o a la cancha de en Juana Díaz, y el lugar estaba lleno, la gente estaba metida. Conocen su primera noche allí al Invader número 1, quien era el head booker de WWC en aquella noche, y le dice, te le dicen que vas a ser técnico. Es como que, pero me dijeron que iba a ser rudo. No, pues vas a ser técnico. Y como que cambiaron, como que tú eres el muchacho de ayer al Brisco. Sí, yo soy el muchacho. Oh, perfecto. Y le explicaron lo que tenía que hacer en ese momento. How complicated was or easy adjusting, to living in Puerto Rico? Because, for example, I've spoke with people that live here before, Andy Anderson, for example, and one of the things they mentioned was that the Puerto Rican time is like, if they say 8, it's never 8.
Oh yeah.
What was the easiest or the hardest part?
Oh yeah, the funny part was I would literally, somebody, for instance, would come pick me up for a show, and I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to throw his under a bus. But what they would do is they would say, "Oh, I'd be there at 6." Okay. So I'm sitting outside at 6, 8 o'clock, they show up. And then we still got to drive ahead of us. So I would literally, and a lot of times at that time, I would be like the first match. So I would have to call on my cell phone and tell them, okay, I'm coming, hurry up, or we'll have to move you to second or whatever. So I would literally be in my gear with just like some warm-up pants and a t-shirt on, and they would be driving me to the town. And, I'm not going to mention any names, Joe Bravo. Anyways, he would show up and I would ride with him, or like Eddie and them were pretty good. Eddie and Carly were pretty good about picking me up on time, but some guys, they would show up and you're like, I'm going to show up now. And I would get there and I was literally taking my stuff off and the bell is ringing and they're telling me what I need to do. And then I'm running and I'm like getting dressed real quick. I'm like literally getting where I need to be in the car. And then I would like run into the building, throw my stuff down. Ding, your music's hitting. And then I would like go to the ring and do what I need to do. So it was like, for a little while, it was like that. And then after a while, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start renting a car.
Easier.
And I'll take care of it myself. So after a while, I started making a little bit more money. And then I was like, I'll rent a car on the weekends. I think I'll be all right. So I got enough of that to where I was like, I don't want to be rushed. I'll take my time. They're not going to be rushed. So why am I going to be rushed? So that was the whole thing on that. So it was kind of funny, but go ahead.
I'll translate that. ¿Cuál fue la parte más complicada o difícil de complicada o fácil de moverse a Puerto Rico? Una de las cosas, obviamente, es el tiempo puertorriqueño. Le decían a Brent, vamos a buscar a las 6. Y Brent, I'll be there. Se sienta a la parte afuera, espera, normal. Nadie llega. 8 de la noche. Ahí llegaron a buscarlo. Es como que, mano, 2 horas de más. Pero en Puerto Rico eso es normal. Entonces él los llamaba como que, mira, yo soy la primera lucha. Yo soy la primera. Vamos a avanzar. Llegaba así, sí, ya voy por ahí, ya voy en camino, la clásica. Y llegaba, entonces ya estaba en la ropa de lucha, tenía el pantalón corto, tenía la t-shirt, tenía la tuerto puesto, que era como que muchas veces cuando llegaba al coliseo, simplemente sonaba la campana y ya él iba, se quitaba la camisa entrando y ya le decían qué tenía que hacer y entraba. Así funcionaba la cosa. O tenían que llamar para mover la segunda hasta que un día dijo, ¿sabes qué? Ya empezó a hacer un poco más dinero. Voy a alquilar un carro los fines de semana. Y eso fue lo que hizo y empezó a moverse para ir a su ritmo y a su pace constantemente. I remember you specifically in Ponce, my hometown. Yeah. So I was obviously a fan of WWC growing up. And I remember seeing you when I was like maybe 10, 12 years you enter with your gimmick and everything. And while being a heel, you were highly probable the only guy in the roster that, you know, shook kids' hands and took time to sign autographs. And like, you did it as a heel, you did it as a baby face without any problem. And that's why, at least in my opinion, you easily won the audience here in Puerto Rico. But, you know, working with them may be complicated. How different was adjusting to wrestling in Puerto Rico, the audience, the system, the backstage politics, everything, compared to what you did before?
Okay, well, a lot of it, that was kind of like my first company that I'd really been in.
Okay.
So I was pretty much new on everything, you know. So I had, you know, been training with the Funks, and training is a lot different from being actually working for a company. And then in WWE, you know, everybody, when I would go backstage, everybody's very polite. There might be stuff on the, you know, but up front, everybody's polite, very nice and polite and stuff like that. But, you know, that's just the front. But when you would go to Puerto Rico, I would hear people, like, as far as, I got real good after a while of understanding Spanish. Now, here's the thing. People were like, well, why didn't you speak Spanish very well? I said, well, here's what I would do is I would go up and attempt Spanish to talk to somebody. And they would turn around and say, I speak English.
Oh.
I know you don't speak Spanish. So they would sit there. It was like they were kayfabing me. And then they go, oh, yeah, I speak English. And then they start talking to me. And I was like, that would happen all the time. So, well, we learn English here. So I was like, okay. So that would happen. But being backstage, I would say working with the crowds and stuff like that, the crowds were very live. Like, there were times that I really pissed them off a lot. And then there were times that they really liked me. After a while, it got to the point where I was liked, hated. Then people just like, okay, this guy's cool. So it was like, let's just go with it. And then after a while, they're trying to make me a heel and people were liking me regardless. So because I just woke up one day and I worked with Roddy Piper one time, and he's told me straight up, he goes, he watched me and he said, listen, you got it. You just need to, like, you want to be the man here. He goes, you got to make sure everybody thinks you're nuts around here. I said, okay. So I started doing that and it worked. And just with the crowd, I would try to get them going. I would try to do whatever I need. Backstage politics. For a while, it was hard for a little bit, but after a while, you know, I started winning people over, you know, and started, you know, work. And then after a while, they started having me come up with my own finishes after a while, you know, or what they wanted me to do or whatever, you know. So, and I could work with just about anybody. So there was a lot of guys that I got them started. They got started early there, and I would work with them and try to make them good and try to work with them and try to make them a better wrestler from anywhere from 450 to, okay, Orlando Colon, like guys that had just started in their careers, and they're like, all right, you're going to work with them and you're basically going to teach them. I was like, okay. So that's a lot of what I would have to do. And that's just a little bit of guys like BJ, Free, and all these guys. There's a ton of guys that it was like that. And it was just, you know, after a while, I think they had a lot of confidence in me after a while to know that I could carry the ball and do what I needed to do. So, you know, that's what I tried to do. So I hope you can translate that.
I can. ¿Cuál fue la parte más difícil de adaptarse a la lucha libre puertorriqueña, a la política backstage, al público, etcétera? Menciona que obviamente en WWE todo el mundo era muy educado, muy polite, muy respetuoso, al menos así en el principio, pero en WWC todo era distinto. Entonces, pese a que fue su primera empresa oficial, las cosas cambiaban un poco, la política backstage era distinta, poco a poco comienza a ganarse a las personas que están encargadas, y entonces él era lo mismo con los fanáticos, él era odiado, era amado, y entonces cuando intentaron virarlo, volverlo heel, ya la gente como que este tipo es cool, y como que era lo respaldaba, era como que gracias al mismo consejo que le dio Piper, que lo que necesitaba era, ok, esta gente tiene que pensar que estás loco, de esta manera te van a mal, y efectivamente, así mismo lo hizo. En un punto llegó el momento en donde le dejaban y le daban la oportunidad de él hacer sus movidas o de crear sus finales de lucha. Y él fue la persona que comenzó a trabajar las carreras de 450, de Orlando Colón, del Fenómeno BJ, entre muchas otras personas que llegaban a la empresa y pues les tocaba comenzar de alguna manera y Brent era la persona indicada. After so many years with WWC, I believe it was 5 years, why did you and WWC parted separate pathways?
Well, I felt like that there was well, first off, there wasn't anything real big. It was just the fact that I kind of felt like it was time. Mm-hmm. I've been there a really long time, and I kind of looked at it like, I want to get a shot at WWE. I've been here long enough. I feel like something's about to go. And there was a lot of guys that were like the main guys like Brian and certain guys that wanted to work with me, talking about backstage politics. They were like guys who were saying, hey, listen, I want to work with him. In the office, there was starting to be a glass ceiling to where it was like I got into arguments, like straight up arguments with Carlos and Jovica, trying to sell myself to be the man, the top guy. And they're like, no, you, da, da, da. I mean, I really started to see the glass ceiling then, that there was a certain level that I was going to get to, and then I wasn't going to go above that. And even though I'd already worked with guys that were the universal title, like they would do like me and Abad, like title versus title, the junior heavyweight champ versus universal champ, and could prove that I could draw the fans. We were in Orgacovis one night, and it was like announced on the fly, like it was a substitute match. They did it. The whole crowd went freaking crazy. It ended up being like a 2 out of 3 falls match. The whole place went crazy, and it was packed, and they loved it. And it was like, and I was proving it even at the last anniversary show. I mean, there were people there with signs that were saying Brent Dail is WWC. There were people standing up for the national anthem before they're throwing crap at me. Now they're standing up for it. And I'm like, okay, if this doesn't say anything, I don't know what will. So I had guys lobbying for me, all kinds of stuff. And they just, I don't know, they just weren't having it. So I was like, I argued with them. I did this. And finally I was like, you know what? It's time. When Christmas comes around, year's over, I'm out. That's it. I'm going to take off. I didn't tell them no. I let them know at the end. It got so bad, I gave him a 2-week notice. Carlos tried to get me a job in Puerto Rico to stay, a teaching job, so I would stay. That's how, like with Brian's school that he was the principal of, tried to get me a job so I would stay. That's like how much it was like, okay, well, you're not. The only way I'm going to get to WWE is if they think that I can be the top draw. So either way, I'm leaving. So it's like, just had enough. I was kind of burned out too. So it was just like, I had over 1,000 matches, honestly, in Puerto Rico in 5 years. Wow. 1,000. I broke my hip while I was there. I'd all kinds of stuff. And I just battled through it and just kept going. I mean, it was like a dang Iron Man there. So it was like, it's just how I was. It was how I was ingrained. A lot of it had to do with the amateur wrestling mentality, how amateur wrestler thinks, no, you're going to keep going and you're going to bull your way through and you're going to do good and it doesn't matter. So it's really kind of the mentality there. So that's how I was. And then later on, it was just like, I made that decision. Maybe it wasn't the greatest decision, but at the time I kind of felt it. It was like, okay, this is what needs to happen. Even though I didn't really want to leave, I felt like maybe I can convince them, but it kind of got to where a point that it was like, I don't feel like there was any convincing them anymore. So it was like, time to go. So, that's pretty much it. So
I'll translate that to Spanish. ¿Por qué Brent Dail y WWC toman caminos separados? Él le llama el techo de cristal. Él comienza a ver hasta el nivel en donde él iba a poder llegar. El campeón universal, Brian, al igual que las caras de la empresa, querían trabajar con Brent Dail y llegaban a la oficina, al igual que el mismo Brent, y Carlos decía otra cosa, y Brent comenzó a ver hasta el nivel en donde él iba a poder llegar dentro de la empresa. Entonces hacían luchas como campeón contra campeón, el campeón junior contra el campeón universal, y la gente se volvía loca. Entonces siempre reaccionaban de manera positiva, las casas estaban llenas, la gente lo compraba, pero nunca le dieron la oportunidad de ser la cara de la empresa. Él siempre quería llegar a WWE y él entendía que la decisión correcta en aquel momento dado era marcharse de la empresa. Carlos quería que se quedara, consiguió un trabajo de maestro para él en la escuela de otro compañero, pero no, simplemente le dio 2 semanas de anticipación y le dijo, después de Navidades me voy. Y así lo hizo. E incluso hubo luchas muy buenas en el transcurso, como una que tuvo en Orocovis, que eventualmente se transformó en una lucha de 2 a 3 caídas. Pero nunca hubo nada más superior a eso. How was your relationship with both, with Carlos and Jovica?
They treated me like I felt like a son to them a lot, because I mean, I would like, even when I was a heel, I mean, I would like, you know, they would sneak me over to their house and stuff like that. And I'd have barbecues with them. I mean, Jovica would like, he would take me home from the office, and he would basically like trying to school me on like what I needed to know. I felt like every time that I was sitting with them, it was like sitting under a learning tree. So it was like always, it was like they were just trying to pour like a ton of knowledge into me. Does that make sense? Because they were even saying, you know, I could see you one day like running your own company. I could see that one day, just because of the mentality you have. And I attempted it, but you know, it takes a lot of money to get a promotion going, you know. So, but the thing is though, is but I feel like if I had the means, it wouldn't be hard. But right now, you know, it is what it is. But I always felt like that they were pouring a lot of knowledge in me. And I feel like that I have all this knowledge that I'm trying not to let go to waste. But because there's a lot of things I feel like that I have to offer because of all the knowledge I know. And there's a lot of stuff because I was taught what it takes to draw money, what it takes to run a company, what it takes to get yourself over, all that kind of stuff. And it's just, now, the only problem that Dutch Mantell used to tell me is like, here's the problem with WWC in Puerto Rico. He goes, you get a ton of work here. But he goes, it is the problem with, it's not as much now, but during that time, it's under the radar. So you're getting all this experience at the time. Now, this is 2005, 2006. Now, a lot different. People have more exposure. People know a lot more about it than they used to. Back then they did, but I always felt that there was something there. It didn't get the kind of media attention that, say, Mexico gets or Japan. And you can agree with that. Yeah. It doesn't, some of it doesn't get the same type of thing. So what it was is like, you're getting a ton of experience, but you're right under that radar. You know, so you have guys like, at the time, the indie guys in states like CM Punk and Samoa Joe and guys like that are getting recognized because they're working the indies in the US. And he's basically breaking it down to me. He's like, you probably got 10 times more experience than any of them do. The problem is that the exposure is your exposure. So it's like, I was like, I get it. So at first I didn't believe him, but then later on I was like, I think he's right. It's like, you know, so that's just the thing. And there's a lot more, I think, time for self-promotion when you're working the indies. You know, you don't work as much. So there's a lot more ways of self-promoting yourself. You know, like some of these tours, like say you go to Japan, you're there for a couple of weeks, you come back, you ain't got nothing to do for a little while. You can promote yourself. You can do this, you can do that. Puerto Rico, it is a roller coaster. You are every week. So it's like you get on a train and you get on a roller coaster and you don't stop. You don't have time to sit around and go, oh, let me put myself over here. Let me do myself here. Let me get all this promotion of myself here. It doesn't work like that. And it's just, do you agree with me or not? It's just kind of that's kind of the thing. You don't have a lot of that stuff. And Carlson and Jovica are not real big on bringing a ton of attention to themselves. They're more like whatever's on the island in the Caribbean. Now there's some attention to them, but there's not the same. Does that make sense? That's what I'm getting at. It's just the fact of that. I mean, hopefully people could understand what I'm getting at here with this, but there's something missing there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, in the sense of exposure and media and things like that. And I think it's great now that we have it, but before there wasn't there. It wasn't. So
No, where there were like 3 different forums: Pierre Wrestling, our brand Lucha Libre Online, but that at that point it was Wrestling Time magazine, and they had another magazine as well. So yeah, the exposures definitely, it wasn't just the same. And how about the payrolls compared to the US? Were you earning as much money as, for example, CM Punk was earning in the independents?
Here's the deal. Don't have any complaints. A lot of guys would complain about the money. Okay. Now, I don't know if it's because of something they worked out with Briscoe or whatever. I always got paid. Okay. I always got paid. I always got my money. I was making anywhere from a guarantee of like, say, $500 a week. Okay. Now, and then, but that also included, I also had to pay for rent for I mean, that wasn't free for me to live there. I did have to pay for lights. I had to pay for an apartment, all that kind of stuff. So I would get like a paycheck, and then there'd be all these deductions in it. I get an envelope that had deduction here, deduction here. Okay, there's what you got left. And I'm like, okay. So that was, but as far as earning, yes. But then there was opportunities to make more money if you moved up the card. There was opportunities to make more. So, and that's the big thing. It's just like anything. If you're drawing in some money, you're going to get paid more. So that's really how it worked. But I wasn't, I was able to live okay. I mean, I was able to live in Isla Verde. So what does that tell you? So, I mean, and you know, Isla Verde is not a cheap place to live. It's not cheap. So, I was kind of happy. I think it was kind of cool. I got to live my dream. I was like, listen, I'm living my dream. I'm on an island full of like, like a kid in a candy store with all these, you know, it's like walk around as a dang Playboy mansion, or it's Miami when you're walking outside. And it's like, cool. So it was great. I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun, but I think it was the point of like in 5 years, I looked up and go, what am I doing? Where am I going? What do I need to do? Am I furthering myself here? Am I going to stay here forever? Or do I want to throw myself out there and see what happens? Does that make sense? But unfortunately, you're under the radar. You know what I mean? So you don't have, they know of you, they know who you are because of all the stuff with Briscoe and all that stuff. But as far as the US knows of you, but maybe guys in the wrestling business know you, but people outside of that in the bigger market might not know who you are. So that's the big thing on that, because, you know, I mean, that's the best way I can probably explain it. So hopefully you can translate all that.
I can. So,
no.
en su momento, ¿cómo era la relación con Carlos y con Jovica? Bueno, siempre lo trataron como un hijo, siempre fue respetuoso. Él iba a los barbecues en las casas de ellos. Jovica era quien lo llevaba a su apartamento. Siempre lo intentaban de inculcar el mayor conocimiento posible, porque le veían mentalidad de promotor en el futuro. Y decían, tú vas a poder ser promotor. Lo intentó, pero no, obviamente no es nada barato ser promotor. O sea, tener su propia empresa de lucha libre cuesta mucho dinero. Y entre las varias cosas que me dice, me habla de la exposición. Dutch Mantel le dice a él, mira, trabajar en Puerto Rico está excelente, adquieres muchísima experiencia, conoces mucha gente buena, etcétera, 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 pero hay un problema, no tienes la misma exposición que tendrías en Estados Unidos, en Japón o en México, porque estás debajo del radar. Y eso entonces complicó un poco la cosa, porque Carlos y Jovica tampoco buscaban atraer atención de los medios internacionales. Simplemente era pues lo que estaba pasando en la isla y ya. Y algo que es muy cierto. Y lo era para aquel momento. Ahora las cosas han cambiado un poquito. No tanto, pero han cambiado un poco. Y lo interesante de esto es que obviamente él estaba viviendo su sueño. Le estaban pagando una cantidad de dinero, que fue otra de las preguntas que le hice, que era bastante buena, o sea, una garantía de $500 semanales, era buena, pero el problema está, vivía en Isla Verde. Entonces cuando le entregaban el cheque o el dinero, tú veías en el sobre, deducción, renta, agua, luz, y entonces cambiaba electricidad, cambia todo un poco con las deducciones, como que sí estaba viviendo su sueño, sí tenía obviamente muchas mujeres bonitas alrededor, la playa y muchas cosas buenas, pero de aquí, después así de 5 años de estar ahí, se pregunta como que, ¿qué estoy haciendo con mi vida? ¿A dónde voy? ¿Qué vamos a hacer? Y eso es lo que lo lleva a su decisión de marcharse de la empresa y de la isla. I also want to say something else in Spanish. Brent Dail está disponible en todas sus redes sociales, en Facebook y en Instagram. Asimismo, Brent Dail, Brent Dail, tal y como aparece aquí escrito gracias a la edición de Jacobo. Y de igual manera tiene su website, federationofworldfighters.com, federationofworldfighters.com. Before we go to our last question, first of all, thank you so much for your time. And that's actually my next question. Federation of World Fighters. How did that project happen?
I actually, do you remember I was actually working for WXW, which was Alpha Anawahi.
Yeah, Florida.
Juan Simone's. I was working for them for a little bit, and he was kind of a lot like Carlos. He was like bringing me in. It was like I would sit in his office and he would talk to me. And I always felt like when I was around a lot of people, the old timers from different Hall of Famers I'd learned from, I was always like, they always like tried to pour knowledge into me. And I would feel like, okay, it was so much, it was coming out of my ears half the time. So I worked with them. And at the time I was getting, I was dating this one girl. I mean, I'm now divorced, but I got married this one girl, and she says, why don't you come up with your own company? And I had thought about it before. I had it on the back burner. So I was like, all right, well, why don't I do it? So I thought, and I started getting some money for it and started to get loans and things like that. I was trying to do something a little different from just being pro wrestling. I was trying to do something with incorporating like MMA and pro wrestling kind of together. Now I know that's a little hard to do, but
like
why
blood
not?
sport.
Well, yeah, like a blood sport. Yeah, like kind of like what basically what Josh Barnett's doing now. But I was doing it before he even thought about doing it. So I was doing that, and Craig Pittman, Pitbull Pittman, who or Sergeant Pittman or whatever the guy was in WCW. He was also on the Olympic team. He'd also fought Vale Tudo. He'd also done all this stuff. Me and him were good friends. So we had a match in Florida Underground Wrestling, and it was they wanted to market as a MMA style or shoot style wrestling match. We tore the place up. It was in Gasoline Alley in Tampa, and the place went crazy. They loved it. They thought it was so cool. And the promoter thought it was cool. He goes, dude, if we could market something like this, it'd be great. So idea came up. I was like, well, why don't I try it? So I did it. But trying to get people to do it was hard. More MMA fighters would do it more than pro wrestlers would do it. I would ask pro wrestlers, oh, I'm going to be doing that. Oh, no, I ain't doing that. I'm like, why not? Well, I might get hurt. Okay. I was like, I said it's more like strong style, like if you were in Japan. I don't know, something that there was just a disconnect, or maybe it was just the guys I was talking to that just weren't into it. So, but yeah, it's a lot like how the Josh Barnett's blood sport is, but it's that mine has a little bit more like pinfalls in it instead of just submissions, knockouts, stuff like that. I was trying to get off the ground, and I'll be honest with you, it's still in business. I just need the funds to get it going. So, but me, I'm just kind of open to all kinds of options right now. I mean, I've been out of the business for a while. But I know that, you guys calling me up, that was great. Thank you. Cause that puts my name out there a little bit more, and I really do appreciate it. And it's just like, right. I'm kind of like that type of guy that right when I feel like I'm getting out, something starts going here. Come here. Come on. No, not yet. Not yet. Come on. You're pulling you back in a little bit. Like, kind of like in The Godfather type of thing. When I think I'm ready to get out or want to leave, I get pulled back into it again, or somebody throws something at me, and I'm like, okay, cool, why not? So it's because I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy. I'm not in to be. Yeah, if an opportunity ever presents itself, yes, I will jump on it. But I'm kind of content on a lot of things that I've done and whatever, and I wouldn't give up the experience I had for the world. I met a lot of good people. It was really cool. I did kind of make Carlos and Jovica mad because I did actually have a universal heavyweight title match in the States against Apollo, and I beat Apollo. So basically, technically, I'm the lineal universal champion. I never lost it. So that's a little idea. That's just a little jab at them, but they didn't really like that too much. That's probably why I've never come back. But no, the joke is, it's like, but you never know. It might work out something like down the road. Maybe if they decide they ever wanted to bring me back. But I'm kind of like, I've had a good time, and I want to push more on the company, and that's why I keep it in business. I keep it going because you never know what's going to happen down the road. And a lot of it too, I'm working a lot right now, and I'm saving up a lot of money and doing whatever. And if, you know, sometimes when people don't believe in your idea, you got to believe in it yourself. That's just how it goes. So, yeah, that's pretty much it in that sense. So, okay, let's try to translate that.
I'll translate that. Federation of World Fighters es el concepto de Brent Dail, es una mezcla entre MMA con lucha libre antes de Bloodsport. Bloodsport vino después de Josh Barnett. Brent lo creó antes y la diferencia es que esto sí tiene pinfall. La de Bloodsport no. Y la idea ocurre él estando en una empresa underground en Florida, en donde le dieron la oportunidad de crear esta lucha como especie de shoot mezclado con MMA. La gente lo compró. Oye, quien haga esto se va a generar dinero. Pero él dice, pues vamos a hacerlo. Su esposa en aquel momento dado fue la de la idea y él vamos para encima, lo hizo. Y todavía el concepto sigue. Lo que pasa es que obviamente necesita el funding como tal para seguir lográndolo. Mencionó una historia interesante de que él es el campeón universal lineal, o sea, nunca lo perdió porque él derrotó a Polo por el título en Florida. Y Carlos y yo vi que fue como que él dice como un jab al rostro, que tal vez por eso no ha vuelto, pero él no se cierra la idea de regresar en general a la industria. Brent, once again, thank you so much for your time. This has been a great interview. Always wishing you success in your career and in your personal life. And thank you so much, man.
No, thank you very much. I do really appreciate you having me. And my door's open anytime. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate it.
Y sigan pendientes de Libre Online, la marca número 1 de Pro Wrestling y Combat Sports en español.